Cruise prices exploded after the travel boom, but this summer, something unusual is starting to happen. Some cruise destinations are quietly becoming much cheaper, not because they're less attractive, but because cruise lines suddenly have too many ships competing for the same passengers. In certain regions, prices are dropping so aggressively that some cruises now cost less than a normal beach hotel vacation. But here's the catch. These deals may not last long, and a few destinations on this list offer dramatically better value than others. So today, we're breaking down 7 insanely cheap cruise destinations to travel this summer and why cruise pricing is getting strangely competitive right now. If you love cruise tips, cruise hacks, and avoiding expensive travel mistakes, make sure to subscribe because we post new cruise videos every week. Destination 7, Bahamas. The oversaturated weekend cruise market. Cruise lines are practically fighting each other for Bahamas passengers right now, and that's creating some surprisingly cheap cruise deals for travelers willing to take advantage of it. Over the past few years, cruise companies have flooded the Bahamas market with massive ships offering non-stop 3- and 4-night sailings. Almost every major cruise line wants a piece of the shore cruise market, especially for first-time cruisers looking for a quick tropical escape without spending thousands. And when too many ships compete for the same passengers, prices start dropping. Some Bahamas sailings are occasionally falling below $400 per person, especially during slower weeks or last-minute booking windows. In some cases, the cruise itself can cost less than what people spend during a normal weekend staying home, eating out, and going to local events. Meanwhile, passengers are stepping onto private island beaches with clear turquoise water, white sand, massive pools, and luxury-style resort areas that feel far more expensive than the actual cruise fare suggests. But there's a catch. Cruise lines often make their real money after passengers board the ship. Cheap cruise fares can quickly turn expensive through drink packages, casino spending, specialty dining upgrades, Wi-Fi packages, spa treatments, and endless onboard upsells that appear throughout the voyage. The Bahamas may be one of the cheapest cruise destinations in 2026, but only for passengers who avoid the spending traps once they're on board. And surprisingly, the next destination may offer even better value without the overwhelming tourist crowds. Destination 6, Mexico, Cozumel plus Costa Maya. The budget cruise capital. Western Caribbean cruises are becoming one of the biggest value battles in the entire cruise industry right now. Cruise lines continue adding more ships to routes visiting Cozumel and Costa Maya, and that growing competition is helping push prices lower for travelers. For budget-conscious cruisers, this region is almost becoming the cruise world's version of a bargain paradise. Passengers step off the ship into giant blue water, beach clubs lined with palm trees, street tacos that cost just a few dollars, and snorkeling water so clear it almost looks digitally enhanced. And unlike some cruise destinations where every activity feels overpriced, many excursions here remain surprisingly affordable. In some cases, shore excursions can actually cost less than parking at major tourist attractions back in the United States. That's part of the reason these itineraries continue attracting first-time cruisers, families, and travelers trying to maximize value without sacrificing the tropical experience. But experienced cruisers already know the real savings often happen away from the cruise line itself. Many passengers save significant money by booking excursions independently instead of through the ship. Local beach clubs, snorkeling tours, and transportation options near the port can sometimes cost dramatically less than the cruise-sponsored versions. And another hidden trap? Port shopping zones near the docks are often heavily overpriced compared to local markets farther away from the tourist areas. Mexico's cruise ports may look heavily commercialized at first glance, but travelers who know where to spend and where not to spend can stretch their vacation budget surprisingly far here. But now the pricing patterns start getting even stranger. Destination 5, Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic routes. The underrated tropical value. This is where cruise pricing starts becoming surprisingly inconsistent, because some of the most beautiful tropical itineraries are quietly remaining cheaper than many travelers expect. Cruises visiting Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic often feel far more exotic than standard Caribbean loops packed with the same repetitive port stops. Instead of feeling like a quick tropical sampler, these itineraries can start feeling closer to a true island-hopping vacation. Passengers walk through colorful historic streets in San Juan, relax on beaches surrounded by mountain scenery, and visit islands that feel noticeably different from the heavily commercialized cruise ports many travelers are used to seeing. And despite offering a more immersive experience, these routes sometimes remain cheaper simply because they receive less mainstream attention than Bahamas or Western Caribbean sailings. At the same time, more cruise lines are expanding Caribbean deployment schedules, creating additional competition across these longer itineraries. That combination, lower overall demand mixed with increasing cruise supply, is creating unusually strong value opportunities for travelers willing to try something beyond the most heavily advertised routes. In many cases, passengers are getting longer itineraries, more culturally diverse ports, and a more premium-feeling experience without paying dramatically higher prices. And that pricing imbalance may become even more noticeable as cruise lines continue fighting aggressively for bookings throughout 2026. Because the next destination on this list may be one of the biggest pricing surprises in the entire cruise industry. Destination 4: Mediterranean Cruises. The Europe Shock. Europe is supposed to be expensive, which is exactly why these cruise prices are catching people off guard. For years, Mediterranean vacations were seen as luxury trips reserved for travelers willing to spend heavily on flights, hotels, trains, restaurants, and transportation between countries. But cruises are quietly changing the math. Instead of paying separately for hotels in Italy, ferries in Greece, restaurants in Spain, and transportation between cities, travelers are increasingly finding Mediterranean cruises that bundle nearly everything together for surprisingly competitive prices. And in some cases, these cruises are now cheaper than trying to visit the same countries individually. That's what makes this trend so unexpected. Passengers can wake up in Italy, spend the afternoon exploring ancient streets and seaside cafes, then return to the ship and eat dinner while sailing toward Greece as the sun sets behind the open Mediterranean Sea. The entire experience feels expensive, but thanks to increasing cruise competition in Europe, some summer sailings are becoming far more affordable than many travelers realize. Of course, there are still traps that can destroy the value quickly. Port excursions booked through cruise lines can become extremely expensive. Peak summer airfare can dramatically raise total trip costs, and tourist-heavy restaurants near major ports often charge inflated prices for average food. The cheapest Mediterranean cruises usually belong to travelers who plan carefully before boarding. And now there's a question almost every experienced cruiser has a story about. What's the cheapest cruise you've ever taken, and was it actually worth it? Because the next destination completely breaks the idea that beautiful automatically means expensive. Destination 3: Alaska. The luxury-looking surprise. Alaska cruises look expensive, which makes some of these summer deals surprisingly weird. Everything about Alaska feels premium. The scenery looks cinematic. The ships often appear more luxurious. And the entire experience feels like the kind of vacation people assume costs a fortune. But behind the scenes, cruise lines have quietly expanded Alaska capacity in recent years, creating periods where competition starts driving prices lower than many travelers expect, especially during shoulder season windows. Passengers stand on deck watching massive glaciers tower over freezing blue water while whales surface beside the ship. Snow-covered mountains disappear into the clouds as the ship slowly moves through narrow coastal passages that almost look unreal. It feels like a luxury documentary brought to life. And yet some Alaska sailings now cost less than staying at certain luxury resorts, while also including transportation, meals, entertainment, ocean views, and multiple destinations in a single trip. That pricing imbalance is one reason Alaska cruises continue surprising travelers searching for high-value vacations. But experienced cruisers know timing matters heavily here. Balcony cabins can sometimes become dramatically cheaper during specific booking windows, especially closer to shoulder season departures. Many travelers also save huge amounts by avoiding overpriced cruise line excursions and booking certain activities independently when possible. And surprisingly, some of the best Alaska deals appear during months when the weather still looks incredible, but tourist demand slightly drops. Which brings us to a destination where cruise pricing may become even more aggressive as 2026 continues. Destination 2: Southern Caribbean. The luxury illusion. The Southern Caribbean feels like the kind of vacation people assume only wealthy travelers can afford. The water here almost looks artificial, bright turquoise with tiny boats floating above water, so clear you can see the ocean floor from the ship. Everything about these cruises feels elevated. The ports often appear less crowded than the heavily trafficked Bahamas routes. The beaches feel more secluded, and the entire atmosphere carries a calmer, more premium energy that immediately feels different from shorter party-focused sailings. That's one reason Southern Caribbean cruises are quietly becoming one of the strongest value opportunities in cruising. Many of these itineraries are longer, which can initially sound more expensive, but cruise lines are increasingly competing aggressively on these routes as they expand Caribbean deployment schedules. And unlike some destinations that face unpredictable weather disruptions, the Southern Caribbean often benefits from stronger weather consistency during large parts of the year, making these cruises feel even more reliable for travelers planning major vacations. Passengers spend days moving between tropical islands filled with soft white beaches, calm blue water, colorful coastal towns, and sunsets that almost look edited for social media. The experience creates the illusion of an ultra-premium vacation. But compared to luxury land-based resorts, where hotels, food, entertainment, and transportation are all charged separately, these cruises can sometimes deliver surprisingly strong overall value. And emotionally, this may be the closest thing to escaping reality entirely. No traffic, no work stress, no schedules, just warm ocean air, endless blue water, and the feeling of temporarily disappearing into a floating tropical resort. But the final destination on this list isn't actually a destination at all. It's a cruise strategy that many experienced travelers quietly use to save enormous amounts of money. Destination 1: Repositioning cruises. The cruise hack most travelers never use. This may be the biggest cheap cruise secret in the industry. Most travelers search for cruise destinations. Experienced cruisers sometimes search for ship movements instead. Repositioning cruises happen when cruise ships relocate seasonally from one region to another. Instead of leaving ships in the same place year-round, cruise lines move them between markets based on weather and travel demand. And because the cruise line's main priority is often simply moving the ship itself, prices on these sailings can become surprisingly low. That's where some of the best cruise deals in the world quietly appear. Passengers suddenly find itineraries like Europe to the Caribbean, Alaska to California, or even full transatlantic crossings priced far below what many travelers expect for trips lasting well over a week. And the experience feels completely different from a typical cruise. Some repositioning cruises feel less like vacations and more like temporarily living on a floating resort. There are often more sea days, fewer rushed port stops, and far more time to actually enjoy the ship itself, the pools, restaurants, ocean views, lounges, theaters, and quiet moments watching endless water stretch across the horizon. For many travelers, that slower pace becomes the entire appeal. But there are trade-offs. These cruises often involve one-way airfare logistics, fewer destinations, and longer periods at sea that may not appeal to travelers wanting non-stop activities every day. Still, for passengers focused on value, repositioning cruises may quietly remain one of the smartest cruise hacks available heading into 2026. And as cruise lines continue adding ships faster than demand grows, opportunities like these may become even more common. Cruise pricing can change fast, especially during the busy summer booking season. Some of these deals can disappear quickly once ships start filling up. So if one of these destinations caught your attention, waiting too long could completely change the price you end up paying. Whether it's relaxing on a Southern Caribbean beach, watching glaciers drift past your balcony in Alaska, or crossing the Atlantic on a repositioning cruise, some incredible vacations are becoming far more affordable than most travelers realize. So if you enjoy cruise tips, hidden travel hacks, and ways to avoid wasting money on overpriced vacations, make sure to subscribe because there are major cruise changes happening right now that most passengers still don't know about. And before you book any cruise, watch the video on screen right now, because these common cruise booking mistakes are secretly costing passengers hundreds of dollars every year.